to the degree that you want something is the degree you're afraid of not having.
Yeah.
God, I wish I started when I was younger. I go, well, yeah, but you didn't. So shut the fuck up and let's
Right.
keep going.
Right.
Like you can't.
Nobody changes until they change their energy. And when you change your energy, you change your life. Because it's not till then that it's really real.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is way worse than I thought. It's like, oh yeah, it's way, way worse than you thought.
Yeah.
But luckily, there's more to you than you think.
Mr. Marcus,
Jesse.
great to see you,
Great
man.
to see you too, brother. How have you been?
I'm doing good. I miss your leadership, your cold, your guidance.
Thank you, man.
You know,
Thank
all
man.
of that.
I dropped into some breath work today. Have you been keeping up with it?
Inconsistently,
Yeah.
yes. You know, it's on my list of things that I definitely want to do every day, but actually doing them every day is challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. There's so many options for people like us. Like we have so many things we could do, and then trying to figure out what the priority is for that day, and really just like listening. But it seems like every time I choose breath work, it's the right choice.
I feel great afterwards, and it's not a big time commitment for me. It's when you're holding your breath for 8 minutes like you, it's a whole different. You got to carve out more time. But for me, it's not a huge time commitment. 15 minutes to go through my routine, so there's no excuse to it.
So for those of you listening, Jesse and I were part of a crew that went to go see Wim Hof in Poland. If you haven't followed my social media or heard me talk about it before, which was just a phenomenal experience and a bunch of amazing humans. And I think really the beauty of it, beyond just the breathing, which is incredible, and beyond the cold, was going through a transformative practice with people that came in as friends and left as like true brothers, and that's something that's fucking special.
And what's even more incredible is we didn't even really come in as friends. We were social media acquaintances, but we had never met or spoke in person. And of the 10 guys on the trip, 9 or 10 guys really only knew 3 or 4 in person. So it's challenging when you go and you're with a group of people it's intimidating, people you never met, and you have to spend a week together in a foreign country in stressful, potentially stressful situation. But if you make it, you come out so bonded. So I'm so psyched to see you, man. I'm glad you're doing great. And thanks for having me.
Likewise, man. We had just the best chats. I mean, you think about the peak experiences, but some of the regular experiences, just sitting on the couch, just bullshitting, drinking tea and hanging out after a day of breathing and freezing. And that was some of the highlights. So I've been looking forward to doing this ever since then.
Yeah, there were like 10,000 t-shirts that could have been born from that trip. There were so many one-liners, like you had that "I'm not impressed" line, all these different lines that came up that could live on a t-shirt that stick with you.
Yeah, we could have had nicknames on our t-shirts too. It could have been jerseys. Yeah. Well, man, I want to get into some of your story a little bit because it's like really incredible, everything in the wide gamut of things that you've accomplished. But, really probably the first thing that people are tracking is you were a musician. You were a rapper. That's kind of where it started, right? As far as but where would you mark the start of where kind of, you started to forge your path into who you are now?
Well, that was definitely a big turning point in my life. I grew up in New York, in Long Island in the 80s, right when hip hop started to emerge. I lived in a community where I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by all different walks of life. And I got, into that early on. But I would say even before that, I watched my dad go to work 6 days a week. He owned a plumbing supply house in Mineola, Long Island. And, I had the gift, Aubrey, of having my parents together my entire childhood and my adult life. They've been married for 65 plus years. And, so I was in a very warm, encouraging environment. My parents always praised effort more than results. So I was constantly encouraged to try different things and not be scared of the outcome as long as I gave it my all. So my journey started early on with those gifts from my parents, but really my first entree into the real world and rejection and disappointment and success and trial and error and all that was in the music business, which I got into right after college.
It was funny. I was listening to you put some flows out, just some spoken word or drop some bars. You put it out on social media and I was like, damn, he's really fucking good at that. Like really good at that. And then I was just in the office with Ryan, who works on my podcast, and he starts playing me Shake It Like a White Girl. And it's like, this is Jesse. And I was like, oh shit. That's Jesse. Unreal. So I didn't even know that you had, that kind of musical background until I kind of looked into it. And it's pretty, that you did well. I mean, you cracked the top, the Billboard Top 100. You won a fucking Emmy?
I did. I won a sports Emmy. My only goal when I started out was to get a record deal. That's all that I was like. I never had a resume. All my roommates in college were making resumes and sending them out. And I'm like, I don't need a resume. What do I need a resume to get a record deal for? So that was my only goal. And then when I did get my record deal, and I got rejected from probably 15 labels, and before I actually got signed to a company called Delicious Vinyl, I made a classic error, and I didn't reset my goal. So that was it. Like once I did, instead of stepping on the gas and taking advantage of the opportunity, I celebrated it, and I was like, man, that's my only goal. And I took my foot off the gas pedal. And after a year, I ended up getting dropped from the label and having to go back to like, well, oh my God, I don't have a resume. The only thing I've ever done in my life has been a kiddie pool attendant and now a rapper. And like, how's that going to get me a job? So I made a classic mistake of, not resetting my goal. And there was a big lesson in that early on. And that lesson was like, if I get a win, a sale, any kind of momentum, I'm going to accelerate and step on the gas pedal. So, what was a big failure for me and an embarrassment, I got thrown off dropped from the label, ended up being a really great gift in my 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Do you have another example of, you talked about, as not Ryan Holiday, Robert Greene would say, a transgression of the law. Like one of the laws is you accomplish your goal, you don't take your foot off the gas. If that's in Jesse Itzler's laws of business and life, that was a transgression. That was where you learned the law. Where was an adherence to the law? Where did you do it right? Where did you accomplish a big goal and then just keep going? And how was that different?
Well, first of all, I made a promise to myself to not negotiate my goals. So I never, getting a record deal was a huge, huge goal that I could easily have been like, oh my God, this is like, how could I can't handle any more rejection. But I really try not to negotiate my goals. Years later, I wrote a book called Living with the Seal. And I went to 11 publishers and they all rejected it. And a small publisher called Center Street picked it up, literally the 12th and last stop. I don't even know I would have self-published it otherwise. And it became, it ended up becoming a bestseller. So that's an example of, again, sticking to like, I like to go to the end of the movie in my head. Like if I'm running a marathon, I envision myself going through the finish line and then I just reverse engineer it. I fill in the blanks until I get to the end of the movie. And sometimes that plot changes and the script changes, but I really try to keep the end of the movie. In this case, it was a book deal. And then once that happened, I was like, okay, now I got to write a bestseller because, I this, and I don't want to sound, come off the wrong way at all. But as you get a little bit older, and I'm going to be 52. I think it's really important to have super high standards. I don't want to write a book. I want to write a bestseller. I don't want to give a speech, man. I want to be the highest rated speaker at the series. I don't want to be a dad. I want to be the best dad, So once I got that, an example was once I got the book deal, I must have ripped up the manuscript 80 times before I handed it in because I wanted it to be like going back to my parents' lesson. I wanted to be graded on my effort. And I didn't want to shortchange myself in an opportunity that I probably would never get again. So that's an example of taking all the tools and wrapping them into a final product that I was proud of, that I was proud of my effort. I didn't cut corners. I didn't negotiate my goals. And now I put it out. Now that starts the next journey, which is now I got to step on the gas on the marketing side, right? But that, at least the chapter of getting the deal, putting the content out is done.
And then you ended up writing another book, which is another way that you're stepping on the gas. I mean, if your goal was to write a best-selling book, you did it. And then it's like, okay, well, there's another one, you know?
Yeah, I forgot how much energy it takes to write a book. It was exhausting, especially the second one. It has challenges.
I can think I had in the breathwork today, I had a vision of myself, you know, when the book comes out and I'm on the book tour and everything. And I remember with Own the Day, my first book, that I was able to look at it and know that there was not a single moment where I cut any corners, where I could have done more and I didn't. You know, I bled every bit of blood that I could, every bit of sweat that I could to make that. And there was a satisfaction in that was far more important than whether I was a bestseller, whether the book did well. I knew that I absolutely tried my hardest and did my best. And I was looking at that, and there's been a lot of amazing things happening for me so far in quarantine and in the last 5 months, where I should have been slaving over the book, but have been kind of casually working on it. I mean, not casually, I've been working on it, but not at the level of fervor and level of intensity that I think I'm really drawn to. And I could see myself holding the book. And the only thing that mattered was if I could hold that book and know that I gave it fucking everything. And if I couldn't do that, it would be hell. And if I could do that, I would be good.
And it challenges you, because when you think you're done, you're like, am I done? Could I make this better? And that's the difference between, you know, an amazing result or sometimes just a good result. But, you know, you touch on something that I think is really important. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've had multiple businesses in multiple different industries. And the main ingredient, or one of the main ingredients that I think is underrated, and it doesn't just apply to business. I think it applies to being a friend, being a parent, being a son or a daughter, that people don't talk about. And you just mentioned it about your book, is soul. And great businesses, great relationships are built on soul. What we had in Poland, yes, it was an amazing journey, but the relationships were built on the soul that we put into that week. And, you know, I put my soul into that book. And I think that the consumers and customers, the general public, we're smart. You know, I just don't think you can have longevity around creativity and building something without putting your soul into it. And I think there's an energy and spirit attached to that that you can't fake. And I think people can actually feel it in a product. I believe that. And, you know, I got a 980 on my SAT, man. I built my companies on soul, nothing more, you know, more behind it, but as a main ingredient. I always led with soul.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it almost gets metaphysical, but it's not, because there's subtle little ways that we can pick up on these cues. But maybe it just is a little bit. Maybe there is an energetic exchange when you pour something into a company, a brand, a product, you know, a relationship, anything. It makes more sense with a relationship, but even a tangible object, like there's little signatures. Maybe it's a design detail that you caught at the last minute that would have flagged someone who's paying attention's eye, or a word that was out of place or something. But if you really put it in there, people can tell, man.
Even for the recipient, think of this. If I wrote you an email and said, hey, hope everything is cool, man. Thinking about you. Love you, brother. And I hit send. That's amazing. If I write a handwritten letter with the exact same thing, hey, thinking about you, you know, now think about this. I have to get a stamp, piece of paper, write the letter, fold it, lick the envelope, put a stamp on it, take it to the mailbox, mail it to you. Like, there's an energy behind that. I'm not saying it's scalable or efficient, but the recipient, think of how you feel when you get a handwritten letter versus an email.
Mm-hmm.
The same exact words, but the energy is different.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially if it's someone, you know, I think it's almost like a gift of your service to do it beyond the words. You know, it's like, I matter enough that they are going to inconvenience themselves to do this. And it, you know, if that's a relationship you care about, it's beautiful. You know, I mean, I always, in my relationships, and I'm just in a beautiful new one, I'm just recently engaged. And, I love after she falls asleep. You didn't know that? You didn't hear the word? Oh, man. Lots of things have happened, my brother.
Calvin, congratulations, man.
Thank you. It's a total fairy tale. I mean, it's unbelievable. I've known her for 4 years. We were finally in a place where both of us are transitioning out of our relationships, and we were free to explore what was between us. And as soon as we did, it just clicked in a way that I've never been more sure about anything in my whole life. Like, never been more sure, so.
That makes me unbelievably happy, man. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Thank you. It's a beautiful thing. We haven't announced it to everybody yet, but I can't help but talk about it because I just talk about what's present for me in my life. But that's going to come out soon. We'll probably do a podcast, and the world will get to meet her. She's just such an amazing woman.
Good for you.
Thank you, man. Thank you. But yeah, what I was going to say is,
Aubrey, I'm 11 years in, so if you need any tips,
I'm sure, man. I'm sure.
And I wasn't this gray before the marriage.
Well, I'm like 7 weeks in, so I'm still. It's pretty easy so far. It's all just magical. Every bit of the way. But one of the things I love doing is when she falls asleep early, I'll write her a little note or a little poem, and I'll leave it out by the bedside, and just so that she can wake up, and even if she wakes up a little earlier than me, she'll see this note. And finding little ways to do those gestures just makes a fucking big difference. Like the whole day, like I did that last night, and our whole day so far has been amazing because it just puts you in this framework of, I'm happy that I gave it to her and I'm excited for her to read it. She's happy to receive it. And then you just foster, it's like starting the turbine of the lawnmower of love and excitement the right way first. It's like, and then you're off and you're fucking going for the day.
I love that. But first of all, you're making us all look bad. I got to make sure that my wife, Sarah, doesn't do this podcast. We're going to skip this one. But that's great. Yeah. And it's true, man. It sets a tone. And marriage is, it's. They always say it's the most important decision. One of the most important decisions you'll ever make, but it should be the easiest.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, it certainly has been. Like I said, like it's a knowing that it extends beyond choosing. I've tried with my mind to make things work and tried to place that bet, and I've given rings before, never gotten married.
Do you know how long your fiance can hold her breath for? Underwater, submerged in an icy.
I gotta be better than her at some things. I gotta hold this down.
I don't know if you had a qualification. You put it through a test. I was gonna say when my first date with Sarah, my wife, I took her to a illegally hot Russian sauna in New York City, and they rejack the saunas. It's like 205 degrees. State law is 185. And you go in there and they actually give you a paper bathing suit, and women come in, they cover their top with their hands. And after you can't take it anymore and you tap out, they whisk you out, and then they put you under a hose and they pull the lever, and glacier cold water comes on your hair. That was our first date, and it led to marriage. So I can only imagine what's going on in that house.
No doubt. I mean, while we were friends even, I mean, we've done ayahuasca together, Wachuba together, all the plants, and we cold plunged together, and we've breathed together, and we've done all of those experiences. So like a lot of the work to kind of get to know somebody was done as friends. And then I was curious about it, and I think she was too. We were curious about what it would be like if we kind of took the gloves off and were able to like be intimate. And as soon as that happened, we're like, oh shit, like this is everything we could have ever hoped and more. So it's just cool how it happened. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. So I want to talk about one other aspect. I read a post that you made about taking a pretty aggressive bet on buying some Yankees seats when you were young. Like this was you're still in the music business at this point. And like you talk about the ROI on that bet. So if you could tell the listeners a bit about that story, I think it was one of the favorite things I've read in a long time.
Well, I was at the time I got dropped from my record label, but I started writing theme songs for professional sports teams, jingles basically. I was a jingle writer, and that led to me making CDs, team compilation CDs. So, for example, for the New York Yankees, I would write a song for them, and then we would license songs that they play in the arena and take great moments in the team history, and we would sell them. That was my business. And I went to actually pitch the New York Yankees on an idea for a CD, and if they wanted to be part of this what I was selling. And when I was leaving the meeting, the CMO said, and I must have been like, I don't know, 25 or 26 years old at the time. He said, hey, we got if you're interested, we have 4 front row tickets that just opened up. They're called Legend Seats. They were built out for the World Series a year ago. There's only 30 of them. They're actually built on the field. They were built for the commissioner and the lead sponsors for the World Series. And someone just backed out right next to Adidas, which is the title sponsor of the whole venue. And he says, they're going to go quick, but if you want them, you'll have them and you can have them for life. And, like I said, there's only 30 of them. So I said, well, how much are they? So the tickets were roughly $1,000. So 4 seats were $4,000 a game times 80, 81 home games. So 860, $320,000. I had maybe less than $10,000, to my name. Definitely less than $10,000 to my name. Our entire company had like maybe $30,000 in our account. And these tickets were $300,000. And my partner was like, no way. And I said to the guy when I was leaving, I said, Derek, give me an hour to think about this. And then I called them back and I took the tickets. I left the invoice on my partner's desk. And I said, we're proud owners of front row seats at Yankee Stadium. And here's why. I knew, first of all, I believe that anyone could go to a restaurant or entertain people at a show, but there was only 30 of these and you can never get these tickets. 2, I said, we'll have them for life. I'll be able to build memories with my family and my kids one day down the road. And 3, I believe that it would pay itself back tenfold through customers, clients, using it to prospect, etc. So we bought the tickets. I ended up borrowing the money from a friend of mine. And then a year later, the plan came to be, and I took Jay-Z to a game with his partner, OG Wan, and we ended up splitting the seats with Jay for several years. And a year after that, I sold my business in those seats to a company called SFX. And one of the reasons why they bought the company, they wanted the seats, their customers, and their network. So it was a combination. I always say you put yourself in a position where you can attract luck. You have to create your own luck. And we got a little bit lucky. And I would not recommend anyone go into debt, but I had a calculated plan to monetize these seats through entertainment, through customer relations, etc. And I always knew I could offload them. Once I had them, I could offload some of the seats or split them up. So as a young kid, and I had those tickets for 10 years. And it's been a great, by the way, I did the same thing with the Knicks a couple of years later, and I still have those tickets. So, for me, it was a big part of my journey. Again, 980 on the SAT was I was always the business plan. People were betting on me. They were betting on my partner. They weren't betting on my widget or my product. They were betting that we would deliver whatever it was we were selling. At this time, it was music, then it was private jets, then it was coconut water, and it's on and on and on. And I needed that kind of ammo, because I'm best in that environment. So that's what happened.
It's so cool to just, and such a wise lesson to take a bet on yourself. Like you knew what your strength was, and this is like you said, this is giving you ammo. This was making the biggest bet you could possibly make on yourself. And I think it's rare that you regret that. Like, I've bet on other companies before, like, ooh, that's a cool idea. And I've usually lost my ass if I don't really know the people and I'm not involved. It's just betting on something randomly, throwing some money in there. But I don't think I've ever regretted betting on myself, really.
I've always been a get your foot in the door guy and figure the rest out later. I started a private jet company with no money and no airplanes and no aviation background. And we grew it to $5 billion in sales. But the concept was the same. If I can get this deal, if we can make this happen. I was a kiddie pool attendant 4 years before that. I went from kiddie pools to selling private jets. And the fear of not knowing anything about the aviation industry, not knowing a lot of a network of incredibly wealthy people to buy the airplanes, and looking at the challenge ahead. If they would have said to me, well, you need Department of Transportation approval to start this company, FAA approval, you're going to have to raise money, build a team, got to sell. I'll be like, I was a kiddie pool attendant. Like, what are you talking about? But when you take these things and you say, you know what, well, wait a second. Somebody out here must specialize in FAA approvals. Oh, there's a lawyer. Let me get that lawyer. Oh, that's done. Let me get the Department of Transportation guy that now. And you just start to chop away, and you kind of take these big tasks and you break them down into small. What's the most important thing I have to do first? You know, my wife always says, make a product and sell it. It's that simple. You know, just make more of it, sell more of it. I've always tried, and if I had the confidence that I could deliver, and if I don't, if my spider senses, and that's one thing, you have amazing spider senses. If your spider senses tell you, well, it doesn't feel right, or usually you can trust your gut. And the only way to be in tune with your gut is to spend time alone. And you're very in tune with your gut because you invest in that. Before there was marketing, there was common sense. You know, you're an intuitive guy. Your common sense is intact. You spend time alone, you breathe, you travel, you know, you experiment. So, you know, I don't know this, but I would bet that a lot of the moves you've made are calculated, but also at the end of the day, you trust your instincts.
Yeah, 100%.
Trust that you can navigate. All right, I'm going to go hold. I saw you do it. I saw you say, I'm going to go hold my breath. I couldn't even last a minute. I wasn't even fully submerged. You go all the way to the bottom of this ice. I've never seen anything like it. Ice tank, in the coldest water I've ever been in, and hold your breath for 3 or 4 minutes. But you went into it and you're like, I'm going to do it, like very relaxed, calm. And you knew you could do something amazing that day. For anyone that's listening in Poland, we went into this freezing cold. When I say freezing cold, they took a bat and they cracked the ice and took chunks of ice out. And we sat in the water, but until Aubrey decided he was going to go underwater, hold his breath in this thing that would make your head feel like you had 11 7-Eleven Slurpees and had brain freeze. And he stayed on the bottom and had a tea party with himself for 4 minutes.
I think it was only 2.5, but it was still pretty fucking epic.
I've never seen anything like it, man.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. But there was a calmness to it and a confidence to it. And that was no different than, you know, so you apply these to different things, and some of them are business, some of them are personal, some are relationships. But, you know, we are both invest a lot in building up our gut instinct.
Yeah, I can say that pretty much every great success I've had comes from one of those moments, where I see it, I feel it. You know, I just feel that something is possible. And then I just back it, because I believe that it still goes through the faculties of our perception, the faculties of our mind. All of these things are still in play. It's not like a direct channel where you get some information, still using the human being, but it's a part of our mind. You think of like savant syndrome, which is classically shown in Rain Man, right? Where the brain is calculating things that in a normal, you know, prefrontal cortex, rational expression, you wouldn't be able to track things in exactly the way that you could if you tap into some other aspect of the mind. And I think that's really what's happening. Like, there's some part of us that's making a ton of micro calculations that if you tried to watch each one, it would be too intricate and too detailed. Just like what we were talking about, like when you hand a product that you've put your soul into, there's little micro things that you wouldn't notice with the eye, the way that the words are, the way that the design is, the way that everything is. But when it's there, and we just feel it, and we feel that thing. And I think that's what's going on.
The other thing I loved about that moment is, you know, I'm a big believer that if you have an opportunity to create a memory, you take it, because our window on this earth is so short. You know, the average American only lives to be 78, 80 years old. That means if I'm average, I only have 30 years left, 30 summers, 27 summers, you know. And as you get older, it's so hard to create newness in your life. We get built into our daily routines, and then that makes life go really fast. That's why everyone's like, it's going so fast. I can't believe I'm 50, I'm 60, I'm 70. So you have to work hard on creating newness. Now I can say that I'm a little bit older. And what I loved about that moment was you saw an opportunity to create a memory, not just for you, but for everybody there. Mm-hmm. And you didn't negotiate. You didn't talk yourself out of it. you just said, I'm going to go do this, guys. And we all followed you out. It was like, it was like one of those moments, man, like, it was great. But, and then everybody did it, like you set the tone. And that's what I loved most about it. It was like, there was no what could go wrong. It was just like you saw an opportunity to create this life memory and boom, you did it. A week later, you went to the blackout. Boom, you did it again. And I love that about you. I'm drawn to people that live. When I was growing up, Aubrey, this is interesting. When I was young, I slept on all these different couches. 18 different friends put me up couch to couch to couch when I was trying to make it in the music business, bouncing around. And I used to go, when I finally got in the room with the big boys, I would sit there and I was like, man, these guys were 100 millionaires and up, that sold their company to this company that I ultimately sold my company to. I was in these meetings and I used to sit around and be like, wow, these guys are like heroes to me. They're so wealthy and successful. Then in my 40s and 50s, similar profiles appeared in my life. And I was like, whoa, this guy's just rich. He's just sitting behind a screen, manipulating stocks or whatever. Nothing wrong with that. But that was, 19 hours in front of a computer screen. Wasn't the kind of life I wanted to live. And, you start to have different definitions of success. And my definition of success, or one of them, is being good in multiple buckets. You have a successful business. I love you so much, man. So I gotta big you up a little. But
thanks, brother.
Now you're engaged. You have a successful business. You have good friendships. You have a podcast. You help people. You care about all the success is being good at a lot of different things, not just having a lot of money or And you mentioned ROI earlier on. Your return on investment in the tickets that I bought, they come in a lot of different ways. And the biggest return on investment with those tickets wasn't, okay, yeah, great. I built this amazing relationship with Jay at the time. We ended up doing his concert tour on our private jets, the tickets again, the magic of the tickets. But the biggest ROI was the experiences that I had there with my friends and now my kids at these games. And all. So ROI comes on in many different ways. Yeah. And you have to take the chance and say, I'm going to try this. I'm going to experience this. I'm going to get out of my day-to-day routine. And that's what I loved about you jumping into the water the most.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I feel that because there's so many things that drift off into the background of our lives, just kind of fade away into this kind of gray fog of things that we've done. But there's certain things that are bright spots, little neon lights that we'll always be able to remember. And it wasn't just me under the water, which I'll remember, but it was you guys cheering me on, and you were the loudest voice amongst them. You were going nuts out there. And that was at some point I even smiled and a few bubbles like a little fish kind of came up because I was so happy just to have all you guys there. And then I popped out and it was all hugs and cheers and smiles. And, it was one of the happiest experiences that I can recall in the past few years. It's just that bright neon spot and putting yourself in positions to have those really fucking interesting things. That's epic.
It doesn't happen sitting on the couch, man. You got to take the risk. You got to take, and you can't overthink it. So it was great.
Is that one of the motivations behind you doing the ultra marathons and the calendar club and all of these different extreme physical challenges that you've had, is to create memories or to test some aspect of yourself?
Both. I think, I do a lot of endurance races, not a ton of them, but I try to do at least one or two a year. What I love about 100-mile runs or challenges, I've done some long paddleboard races, is I never try to win. I just try, it's a test of will. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that translates into all the buckets of my life. It makes me a better dad, a husband, son, friend, employee, partner, whatever. Because I feel like if I can go out there and push myself for 20-something plus hours, running on a dirt road, you can out-negotiate me? You can have more endurance on the negotiating table? Are you going to, at least it gives me the confidence that man, I'll sit here and argue this point for 7.5 weeks.
like a cricket match.
Yeah, I don't care, man. You want to see. So I love that element of it. I love the training. But they asked Richard Branson what was the biggest thing he would attribute to his success. And I believe he said going to the gym, but I don't think he meant doing curls and getting muscles. I think he meant prioritizing himself, the discipline, the consistency. And that's what I love about this. Those races prioritize your mind, your training. It's easy to lose track of that. The average American gains 2.5 pounds from 35 to 70, something like that. All of a sudden you wake up, you're 60 pounds overweight, you're 70, and you can't do shit you wanted to do when you were younger, and now you're done. You don't get another chance. It's over. You get 10 years of life, man, and you blew it looking at your computer screen, eating sushi, and now all of a sudden. So I don't want that, man. I like these challenges because I just like it. It's the way I'm wired. I like being outdoors. I like pushing myself. I like new adventures. I like learning. I like sharing those experiences. And I also find that it makes me way more disciplined in all the areas of my life. Now, I don't even like the word discipline because discipline sounds like, it connotates in a weird way deprivation. People think like if you're going through a time where you have to be disciplined, you're depriving yourself of something else. Like if I said to you, and that deprivation never works. That's why diets don't work.
Yeah.
Like you're taking it away, but lifestyle works. So those things to me, they're now part of my lifestyle. And without that, I feel like I'm empty. If my wife took that away from me, I would resent her. I need that as part of my lifestyle. So that's why I do it.
Yeah. It's, I think we're in a place where things can get really fucking comfortable, like really comfortable, way too comfortable, which is great because then it gives us the opportunity to choose our own struggle, like to choose our own challenge. And I think a lot of times people can talk about how comfortable things can be as if it's a problem. It's the best thing ever because then it allows us to choose with our own free will exactly how we want to struggle, but we better make some choice, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like we have to put ourselves in a situation where we're going to have to rise. Like that's the point of a struggle, is to provide the pressure that causes you to rise up, which builds that fortitude and the strength and the courage and the trust in yourself. But we have to choose it one way or another. And whether it's the ice or whether it's a long 100-mile stretch of pavement or whatever you want to do, at some point you got to choose it.
I totally agree with you. And we all choose it in different ways. And, I think it's really important. Like I said, I have to work hard for newness, married, 4 kids under 10, taking care of my parents who are older, multiple businesses. There's a lot going on. So I actually schedule that. I don't want to say discomfort because I think getting comfortable, being uncomfortable is a little bit, there's a lot more to it than just those words. So I like to plan that off. I like to say every year I make sure I do one thing that really defines the year. I think a lot of us go through our lives. And if I were to say to a listener here, what'd you do in 2014? What was something big that happened in 2011, 2015? What'd you do 8 days ago? 8 days ago. Most people would struggle to answer that because like we're on cruise control, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's like it's all over. And we're like, and then we regret that we went through life at like being the 80% version of ourselves. So I think it's really important to actually say, that's why we said we're going to take a trip again in January. It's important to put a flag in the ground. And this has nothing to do with economic status, or anything. You can always find time. You can jump into a cold ocean. You can go to an event, but putting stuff that's new and exciting, it keeps the creativity going. It takes your grit baseline and it raises it, the bar, whatever bar you're operating in. If you do challenging stuff, you can actually raise your baseline. So I invest a lot in experiences, and that those races are part of that portfolio. I would say I over index in experiential stuff, and that's where I spend my money. I don't have any art. That's what I like to spend my money on, and that's what I like to do.
Doesn't seem like a much better place that we can spend our money on than that. I mean, just the benefit just goes way farther across, cuts through every aspect of who we are and the experiences we have, from our community to our relationships to ourself to every aspect. So I think that's a good lesson for everybody to take.
I just bought an RV. I mean, I'm so lucky to be able to do this. So I understand, believe me, how grateful I am to be able to say that I bought an RV. But I am, been driving around the country with my family for the last 3 weeks in an RV, and stopping and jumping in lakes and rivers and oceans, and sleeping in RV parks. And it's amazing, man. And I had a financial planner that came to my house. I've had like 50, Aubrey. They all have the same pitch, but they have a different logo, but the same exact pitch. And finally somebody came in and he said, if you could leave your kids a boatload of money or a boatload of life experiences, what would you choose? And I was like, well, obviously life experiences. And when he said that, I was like, I'm getting an RV, man. Yeah, I'm getting an RV. And I did. The next day I bought it online, never saw it, and we were off 4 days later. We're out of here.
I can remember taking RV trips with my parents and how much I just enjoyed them, whether we were just going someplace to look for arrowheads in New Mexico and pottery, or cruising around. I think one of the things that's so special about it when you're a kid is I think kids crave the proximity and this kind of family tribal living with their parents. Because all too often parents want to have sex. They want to kind of keep their space. They put the kids to bed, they go away. But in a small RV or in a small house, I lived on a ranch house with my parents and my 3 sisters in this tiny little 2-bedroom, ranch house for a year. And it was some of the best memories of our life, just because everybody's together. So there's nothing to do but just dance or sing or hang out or laugh, or the family's all together. And plus, adding the RV, the ability to go on an actual adventure in a lake or a stream or a place. I just, for parents listening, I really recommend it. Even if you just rent an RV and just cruise around, like, your kids are going to fucking love it.
We did. We started out renting. We rented last summer, and then I totally agree. And also, it's, again, it becomes one of these things that is just super memorable because it's so different and outside of your regular routine. So we've enjoyed it. If anybody sees an RV swerving side to side, going about 40 miles an hour, I'm a New Yorker at heart. I'm not a great driver. A lot of people have been giving me the finger and like, you're not even on the speed limit. But I don't care, man. I'm staying in my lane and just boom.
That's awesome. Well, you have such a great business mind, and these are really interesting times. So I was wondering if you could give, any of your thoughts that you've had. I mean, there's more people have lost their jobs in this situation than probably any time in our lifetime history. We'd have to go back a long ways. I don't even think in, 12 years ago when we had our crisis that it was anything close to this as far as unemployment. So what do you see as far as, and I know one great thing to just add in, that the Chinese have their symbol for crisis is also the symbol for opportunity. So those two things are the same. And so what do you see as far as, the opportunity that this situation is now kind of presenting? Everything's been on pause. A lot of the different ways that we look at our employment and safety and security, all of that has kind of shifted. So if you're, a young, hungry, enterprising individual right now, what are you seeing as an opportunity?
Well, let me first say that, I've struggled it's hard to celebrate a lot of life's victories right now when, so many people are out of work and so many people have been sick and affected by what's going on. So, I'm not insensitive to that at all. And it's just a tough time. And I would be lying to say that, like, yes, there's definitely there is opportunity, but it's super challenging right now. Mm-hmm. So, I don't want to sound like I'm not aware of that or in a bubble, because I am super aware of it. I think for many people, I think the first thing is, this is a great time to be remembered, and I've posted this on social, as a great human. And I personally have taken inventory on the companies and individuals that have reached out to me to see if I'm okay. I've called all my partner and I have called all 1,000 customers we have in this event race that we have to personally let them know that we're thinking about them, make sure that, that they're on our mind. So it's a great time to reach out to people, check on friends and family. And at the end of this crisis, pandemic, you want to be known as someone like, oh yeah, man, Aubrey, we had our group call right away. We had a Zoom call. We organized it. Everybody got on. I want to be remembered as somebody that people like, oh yeah, this guy stepped up during this time. So for starters, outside of business, we have a responsibility to check in on our friends, families, and loved ones. I think it's a great time to plant seeds, to DM, reach out to people, write handwritten letters. During this time, if you're consistent and you were to send 10 DMs, texts, or emails a day, over the next 30 days, you'll send 30 potential employers, maybe customers, maybe employees, maybe resumes out, 300 just by being consistent and spending 10 or 15 minutes a day. So it's important to not lose track of the power of cumulative time and to be disciplined. I think it's really important to time block during this time so you don't waste days. Where if you carve out 2 or 3 hours to send resumes or do interviews or whatever, or research or whatever, that the days, because there's a lot of distractions at home. I remember this, Aubrey, when I started out in business, I was on couch 18 of the last couch. I had to be off my friend's couch, and I went to a bachelor party instead of looking for a new apartment. I had to be out by Monday. It was a Friday. And I got at the bar, a girl came over to me and asked me where I lived. I said, well, as of Monday, I have nowhere to live. And she started laughing. She goes, well, if it's an emergency, you can always stay at my house. Half kidding around, and wrote her address on a napkin. Monday, my friend's like, you got to get out of here, man. My parents are coming in an hour. I'm like, this is an emergency. So I packed everything up that I owned. I put it in my little blue duffel bag. I took out that envelope, a napkin with the name on it. I went to Melissa Katz's house. I knocked on the door. I lived with her for 6 months. I was in a situation where I had my $118, and I was writing jingles, songs for teams, and I was selling them on spec. So if I would write a song for the Yankees, but they didn't buy it, I was out the money for the studio. If they bought it, I hopefully make $1,000 or something selling them this silly jingle. So I had no money to write these songs on spec. So Melissa, as it turns out, her father, I had no idea, was an amazingly accomplished entrepreneur, like uber wealthy. And someone had offered me $10,000 to write these songs for 10% of all of my future earnings. And I'm like, I'll take it. So I was going to sell 10% of my life, 22 years old, for 10 grand. She goes, before you do that, go talk to my father. So I go and I talk to her father, and her father says to me, he says to me, I would trade everything in the world that I have for the one thing that you have. And I'm like, me, I have $118. What are you talking about? And he said, youth, the process, the good and the bad, figuring it out, navigating. What we're going through right now is part of the process. I've been through it. You've been through it, not to this extreme, but we go through these peaks and valleys. And he said to me, will you make this work without the 10 grand? I said, Lou, I know I can make it work. He said, that's not what I asked you. I didn't say, can you? He said, will you? I said, I will. He said, then go forget the $10,000. Go make it work. And as I was walking out, he said to me, but can I ask you a crazy question? Are you working out of my daughter's apartment? And I said, yeah. He said, well, this really happened. He said, if you want to do that, he said, you got to do these 4 things, because it's easy to get distracted at home and to spiral, and it's hard to get out of a spiral. He said, the first thing you have to do is you have to get up and get dressed like you're going to work, because you can't be in your pajamas. That's not like your work. You got to get into a work head. He said, the second thing is you have to carve out a place where you want to work. So, you want to come down to a dedicated area where it forces you to be present. You are where your feet are. If you're working, not Netflix, not on social media. You got to be super disciplined. So my advice to everybody during this time, yes, you can watch your documentaries, but if you want to get a job or figure something out or write a book or be creative or start a blog or write a TED Talk or whatever you want to do, you got to be where your feet are, and you have to do number 3, which is block out time. So you want to get dressed, go to a dedicated spot, block out your time. And then the last thing is you have to have a plan. So people talk about the morning routines. That's important, but I'm a much bigger believer in the nighttime routine because my day starts the night before when I map out exactly what I'm going to do the next day. And then I just follow the script. So I'm super efficient. I don't dilly-dally. So I've been doing those things since I had that meeting with Lou. And this is no better time than to implement them than right now. To time block, to have a plan on how you want to spend your day, right? To be present, be where your feet are and focused on what it is so you don't do it. And then the last thing I would say for those that are out there is small wins. Every day, I simplified this quarantine, Aubrey. I came into it really freaked out, like, I'm going to get so much done because I'm home. I'm going to write a book week 1 because I'm home and I have time. Week 2, I'm going to do a whole documentary. I want to do serial killers. I'm going to do it all week 2. Week 3, I'm going to do another book because I have so much fucking time, man. I'm home. And I didn't do anything because I'm homeschooling my kids. And I realized I put so much pressure on myself to accomplish all this stuff when I have enough pressure from the quarantine. I got to worry about my parents and my kids and this and that. And my advice to your question, this is a long-winded answer to the question, but I think it's important, is during this time, I think, the number one thing people want to feel is accomplished. They want to feel accomplished. So I simplified the quarantine into 3 buckets: family, business, wellness. Every day I try to do one thing in each of those buckets.
Nice.
And that's it. So I took the pressure off. Like, I'm not going to teach my kids Mandarin this month. Let me start by saying, okay, I'm just going to and I have little goals. And I'm going to spend some time with my kids today, and I'm going to do this or that. And that's how I've been approaching it. And I think it's the same advice for everybody. Small wins, get momentum every day, time block, make a plan, and chip away.
Yeah. That's a beautiful concept, and I really love it. I'm at the point right now where I'm going to have to make one of those moves that we have to make periodically, where we start folding all of our other priorities for the one priority that matters the most. I got about a 3-month runway before I have to turn in my manuscript on my book. And this is now that time. I mean, I've had this fairy tale romance. I've had a lot of other things. I've been working on the book, but doing different stuff. I was able to detox off my sleep meds. A lot of positive things have happened, but now I'm feeling great. Everything is really solid. And I'm looking at all these things, like posting on Instagram, stuff related to the podcast, my weekly newsletters, the things that I'm still involved with Onnit. And I'm looking at them all. And it's like, okay, this is fold every card to the ace time. And I think that's another thing that will all go. Like, when we know we have something that's going to be of maximum impact, like the leverage on that thing is worth it. There comes a point where you have to really fold to the ace and be willing to give up everything.
100%. And I've been on both sides of that equation where I've given it up, and I found, Aubrey, I don't know, now that you have a more deeper relationship, a bigger commitment, I've always found that when I do that, when I go out of balance like that, like if I'm going to write a book and I have a deadline, you're going to be out of balance. You're going to give up some of the stuff that you were doing to write your book. So other stuff has to go down, right? But I let those closest to me know.
Yeah.
So I say to my wife, Sarah, I said, look, I got a race coming up this month. You're not going to see me a lot. I'll make it up next month. But I don't want her to be angry at me, and I don't want any resentment or guilt. I don't want guilt.
Yeah.
That I'm not with my wife because I have to write a book or train. So I let everyone closest to me know, take the guilt off the table. And then I start to go. And then I say to myself, look, I'm going a mile deep on this book for the next 90 days. And that's my lifestyle, not deprivation. It's not discipline. That's my lifestyle for the next 90 days. But when that's over, I'm going to go back to what was my normal life is. Yeah. So I put, I know it's not forever. And that really helps me, because without that, if there's no end point, it's almost impossible to sustain it, But if you have a definitive deadline, like that's why people lose weight for a wedding, because they know exactly the date. It's like boom, boom. But if you're like, I'm going to lose 15 pounds, good luck. But if I'm going to lose 15 pounds for this wedding, or I'm going to run this marathon on this date, versus one day I'm going to run a marathon, with the definitiveness of it, really helps you towards a goal.
That's a great point. I mean, that's the beautiful part about selling a book and getting an advance is because you have a manuscript deadline. I mean, book is
You never do it.
so brutal. It's so fucking brutal. But then if you have that deadline, then you're like, all right, well, I have no fucking choice now. You know, like
they say, man, pressure's a privilege. You got to put a little pressure on your shoulders to get it done.
Yeah, and if it isn't, like you said, if it isn't something that's coming from a contract or a deal that you've made or something external, just make that for yourself and just start 100%. To trust yourself, you know, and say like, look, this is inflexible. I'm going to do this. And then it becomes that hard border that gives you that finish line, gives you that ribbon that you can smash through however exhausted you are. I mean, I'm sure for you, even on mile 99.75, when you see that last quarter mile and there's that finish line, I mean, however jelly your legs are, there's this buoyancy of just knowing like, fucking finish line, I see it, you know?
Yeah, when I ran my first 100-mile run, I've only run 2 100-mile races. But I ran the first one in 2006. And when I got to mile 99, the last mile took me 48 minutes. And now my 4-year-old daughter could crawl or walk it in 20 minutes. But I had this big feeling of the last mile that I had 50 friends that had come and that we had tents and they were staying, they were cheering me on, that they were all going to run it with me like a Rocky moment. You know, we're all going to run the last mile. It's going to be this great victorious thing. I was doing it for charity and it's going to be this magical moment. Well, my calculation was off. So when I got to mile 83, I thought I was at mile 84. So when I got to mile 99, I thought I was done. My brain was programmed for 100 miles, so it shut down. So now it took me 48 minutes. And I'm holding on to my brother and I'm holding on to my friend and I'm in terrible shape. And I have a half mile to go. And this guy runs by me and he stops and he says, "Hey, finish like a champion." And I was like, "Finish like a champion, man, go fuck yourself." You know, I've been out here for 24 hours. I'm 90, I'm finished like a champion. Get the fuck out of here, man. And I crawl in, but he was right. The one regret I've had, I live with this regret for 13, I carried it around with me for 13 years, man. I carried it around with me, was how I finished that race with my brother and my friend and not in disappointing everybody like this, you know? And 13 years later, I got to avenge that and run another 100-miler. And my slogan was "Finish like a champion," you know? And I would say the same thing for writing a book. Mm. You're going to get to a point. It could be writing a book. It could be a product that you're developing. Right now, I have a new thing I'm launching called the Big Ass Calendar Club where, you know, I could easily be like, it's good enough. Or I could say, finish like a champion, and how do I make it better? And I think a critical component of this journey that we're on, you as an author, me in multiple projects, anybody listening and whatever your project is or special thing, is when you get to a point where when you want to hand it in, if you ask yourself, how could I make this 10 or 20% better? If I started right now, how could I make this 20% better? That's how you get an amazing product. Because most people like, it's good enough, I'm tired, I can't do this anymore, they hand it in. But I've always found that when you go that extra, you play a 10-inning game instead of a 9-inning game. Mm-hmm. When everybody else would go 9 innings, do you have that extra 10 inning in you? Is the packaging good? You know, and I've cheated products before. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. So that's what that I envy. I have a lot of respect for what you're about to go through because the process, but I will say this, Aubrey, and I'm saying this as a friend, and I would say this if I was coaching somebody, it's what you signed up for. Mm-hmm. It's what you signed up for. You don't want to do it, don't write a book. And I know your standards aren't here. Your standards are high. So I know what you're about to go through. And I also know the reward it feels like when it's on the charts.
No doubt, man. No doubt. And it's not only what I signed up for with this specific project. I signed up to test myself the moment I signed up to be a human, the moment I decided to be me, right? It's like, I'm going to fucking go for it. Like, I'm going to go for it. Why? What else? What else are we here to do? It's not a fun game to play it safe in. You know, I mean, you gotta go for it.
Listen, man, you've done it better than anybody. You write your own rule. I don't think anybody has a rule book like you.
Yeah, it's very small. It's a very small rule book. It's a Post-it note. It says, "Don't hurt anybody on purpose," and that's my rule book. It's one sentence.
I mean, it's unbelievable, man. So, I mean, it's just to create that kind of life. And I think we all have the ability to do that, maybe not on the level that you're doing it. You know, you do it on a real high level, but to say, you know, what are our rules and how do we want to define our short little 70, 80-year run if we're lucky, 90 if we're lucky. You know, there's no guarantee. And you've been able to, you know, to create this really unique life and set of rules. It's kind of cool to watch.
Thank you, brother. Well, man, this is beautiful. I'm so happy we got to do this and drop in and share some conversations with people. Where would you like to point people to, man? I mean, and obviously we mentioned some of the books, Living with a Seal, Living with the Monks. You got all kinds of stuff, but where would you like to point people to?
Well, let me end with this, Aubrey. You know, my number one rule as an entrepreneur in my life has been to provide value. You know, like your book, it's like if you provide value, good things are going to happen. My agenda here was just to provide value. So I appreciate you thinking of me and the opportunity. If people do want to learn more about any of the stuff I got going on, it's really just Instagram at Jesse Itzler or, you know, jesseitzler.com. But I appreciate you. If you lasted this whole podcast, thanks for listening. And Aubrey, man, thanks for thinking of me, man. And there's a lot of people you can interview. So I appreciate you taking the time to chat it up with me, brother.
So much love, my brother. Thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe. Also, share with any friend that you think might benefit from it. And lastly, go to aubreymarcus.com, sign up for my newsletter diary, and you won't miss a thing.